What's up guys, and welcome back to another Better Call Saul review. This is for Season 6 Part 2, Episode 12, titled Waterworks. I do apologise for the lateness of this video. Obviously, the last couple of episodes I was off work, now I'm back in work, so it's hard for me to get these episodes out as soon as possible after the episode airs. So if you do enjoy these videos, please do support the channel, because I enjoy making these videos. It's just tough for me to get the time in to actually get them in due time. So let's get on to the episode. So we start off with our usual cold open here, and with this one we actually end up in the Saul Goodman timeline. We have no idea what's really going on. We see Saul sitting in his office and he's just bouncing a ball across the wall, and we get a glimpse that he's looking at something on the table, which is a sort of dissolvement or divorce papers essentially from him. And he's sat there and he's just bouncing his ball across the wall, and you can tell that he's in contemplation about what's happening. And we get the call from his secretary that Kim is actually here, or well, a female is here to see him, so you would assume it would be Kim. And he's kind of stalling in this situation, so I'm assuming this is probably the first time he's seen her since the Jimmy days before the whole time jump. So you could probably sense that he has a lot of thoughts going through his head about what he's going to say to her or how he's going to act, with his whole personality changing from Jimmy's personality into the Saul Goodman one. And he basically says that he will send her in when he's ready, and he's bouncing his ball off the wall. And as you can see in the image there, he's really hitting this wall hard. He's getting more and more of his thought process here, and he actually knocks the pillar down, which is a part of his wall setup, which obviously means that it's a very cheap sort of setup for him. It goes with his whole sleazy looking vibe, but more of a metaphorical reason is this is it's kind of a feeling that his walls are closing in on him, as you can see as it literally falls onto his desk, and it's like a sign that things are probably going to be going downhill for Goodman in this this situation, or from this point going onwards, with the whole connection to the characters from Breaking Bad as well. Now, the previous few episodes have been very Gene-centric, and I'm not complaining about that. It's good to see what he's doing in the present timeline and where his story is going to come to a climax. But this episode was actually really heavily focused on the character of Kim Wexler. She's always been a main staple of the show. She's arguably on the same sort of platform as Jimmy or Saul with their stature in the show, and we haven't seen them in a couple of episodes, and we've always been wondering what happens to that character, where they are in Breaking Bad, and what happens to them in the climax of this story. And we actually get to see her in the Gene timeline now, so this is a very, very Kim Wexler centric episode. So we see that she is living in Florida now. She's brunette. She's changed her hairstyle up. I'm not sure if that's her natural look. Probably not, because I think we saw a flashback of her as a kid with blonde hair. So she's just having a change of style, a change of identity, which is probably something she's wanting to get away from what happened with the whole cartel Howard situation. So we see that she's now living with some other guy, and she seems to be living this sort of fake, false, what's the word? It's like a Stepford Wives or a Desperate Housewives lifestyle, where she's living in a little small suburban area with all these local people just talking about their daily boring lives and making cakes for each other and doing all these things. None of these things actually sound bad, but she's probably used to the excitement of going on all these scams with Saul and doing these things that got her actually interested in being a lawyer and things like that. So she's kind of in her own sort of hell in a way. She's living this mundane, boring life, one that you wouldn't have expected her to end up having. And you can sense this with a lot of the conversations she has with her partner. They seem to just be kind of really mundane and single answers, basically. They're talking and it's just like really simplified. It's like they're just kind of passing through this life together, not really having enjoyment in it. They're just trying to get through it. So not like that's a bad thing. That's a lot of people just have casual conversations, but you just get the idea that she's missing something that she had at one point in her life, or she's just having a simple life is easier than what she just went through 7 years prior to this. I really love some of the imagery as well as with some of these Kim storyline points, because we've seen the Gene timeline, we've seen the black and white already, but when we see it in Florida, which you normally expect it to be all colourful and bright and muggy, we see all like the palm trees and all that kind of stuff. The way that they've done this is really atmospheric. Like there's a shot here where they're outside in the car and the sky is all muted and grey, and it almost looks like the beginning of like a 1950s horror movie, especially with the whole suburban wives family thing. It looks like it could be a 50s monster movie, and I mean it's probably the kind of vibe they're going for. It's kind of like a nightmare scenario. She's just living this mundane life out in the humid suburban areas of Florida where she's not used to it. And I just like the way that they get this across with just the way that the scenes look. They've done a really good job at creating this 1950s horror film aesthetic in something which you wouldn't expect to be a horror scenario really in real life. Next up, we get a scene where she actually gets on a bus and she goes back to Albuquerque, and now we're all thinking, what the hell is she going back there for? What's her motives? What's her purpose? And she seems to be on what is similar to Walter White's kind of redemption arc in Breaking Bad. She's actually going to Howard's wife's house, and she has a letter where she essentially tells her everything that happened with Howard, with Lalo, with Jimmy, her part in it all, and she's just lying it out there on the table for her on a piece of paper. She's not telling her via word of mouth, because I'm assuming she's just probably too disgusted in herself to even to get through that conversation. But I just love the subtlety in the acting and the writing in these scenes. You can just see like it's the minutiae details in this which just make this show set apart from everything else, because we see when she first walks into the house and she goes to sit down with Howard's wife, she goes to sit next to her on the table, and you can just see her kind of cringing away from it, and you see her decide to move across the table to sit in a different place because of what she's done, and what the consequences of what she's done has affected this woman. So it's obviously something that she's not proud of and not happy with the situation. So I love the subtlety to it of where the characters are thinking, and you can see their thought process through their mannerisms and things like that. It's just certain things you wouldn't see in more low-key shows which are just more action-based or more about shock value. Those are the things that draw me into the show, is the little tiny details. It's a pretty harsh scene, to be honest, because she's reading this out on a paper, and we as a viewer are reading out the lines zoomed in, so you cannot see the exact letter, but you can see certain parts of it that points out where it's talking about shot in the head and faking and cocaine addiction and those things. These are the plot points that we know are going to be in the letter, so we don't need to read the whole thing, but we get the gist of it. But like I said, this is very similar to the scene where Walter White turns up at, I think it's Skylar's house. I'm trying to remember. I know it's something to do with Hank. I'm not sure if Marie was involved with it or if Skylar called up Marie. I'm trying to actually remember that. I remember it's where Walter goes to Skylar's house and essentially gives her the lowdown about why he's been doing this, where Hank's body is, and all of those things. And it's the similar sort of thing. So in that essence, it feels like the climax of this show is more going to be aimed towards us seeing a redemption for Kim rather than Jimmy, and that definitely will play out in the rest of this video when I talk about what's happening with Gene's character. I've always thought that the acting in the show has always been top tier, especially from Bob Odenkirk and Maria Seahorn, who plays Kim in this episode. And we get this scene after she's been to Howard's house where she's traveling back on the bus, I would assume to maybe back to Alaska or wherever the hell she's been, and she's trying to keep it together after what she's just done, and you can just see her body is just like she's having an inner meltdown in front of all these strangers on a bus. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've been around someone who's had sort of like a breakdown in this similar fashion, you'll know how good the acting is, because just the way that she can uncontrollably is like trying to breathe and hyperventilate in, and just it's crazy. It's extremely good acting from Maria Seahorn there, and you just kind of feel bad for her, but holding all this guilt in for all this time, even though she's been a big part in why it happened. I mean, it happened, and he didn't exactly try and stop any of it from happening, so it is on her essentially. And we go back to what Gene is doing. So if you remember from the previous episode, or it might have even been the episode before that, where we see Gene is about to break into the guy's house with cancer and essentially steal his information to use to scam money out of the guy. It was bad enough in that episode where we weren't sure whether he was doing that or not, and to see him go through with it as well in this is just another kind of nail in the coffin for Jimmy Saul's character, because he's just going down this route where the more we see of him and the more he's desperate he gets, the less we are rooting for this guy to have a redemption arc, because he keeps pushing the line, he keeps slipping. We see Gene skulking around this guy's house, the guy's on the floor, and honestly at one point I thought the guy was dead. What is it with this show with showing characters lay on the floor, not being dead but looking like they are dead? That actually brings us to my shot of the week, so I will just quickly put that shot up on the screen for you guys. So here we have my shot of the week here. So this is just this really bizarrely shot image of the guy's house. It shows the whole scope of it, the architecture of it, and we see the guy lay on the floor, which looks like he's a corpse, honestly. And I'm not sure at this point if we know if he's alive or not, because he does start to snore, so you do know he's alive, but I think at this point you don't really know. Maybe you do, because he does press the piano key to try and wake him up. But basically this shot just looks really cool. It's really wide. You get a really wide canvas of the whole house, and the camera's really high up as well. So it's like, it honestly reminded me of something like Clockwork Orange, something from a Stanley Kubrick film. It's really, really weird. It's such a weird open space. You can see so much, but it feels so claustrophobic. And I mean, they're probably going with the vibe that this is what Saul is feeling right now. He's in this big open place with lots of area to maneuver around and get away with this mission he's doing, but at the same time he probably feels like these walls are closing in on him, that he's got to be in there and get this thing done fast. So there's always some kind of thought put behind it, and it's always down to speculation, or it's always subjective, so you never really know, but that's what makes you think about the show, and that's always what's so good. So I will go back to the last picture we just had on the screen as well. I don't know what it is about Gene in this episode, but I don't know if it's his hair or just the way his face is or anything, but they've made him look really sinister in this episode. Like, you get the really like bad vibe about him, like he's capable of doing horrible things, and he's not the Jimmy that we knew, not even the Saul who has some kind of, I don't know, moral compass. This guy looks evil. Honestly, he reminds me of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. It's probably the mustache more than anything, but seeing this guy skulking around this guy's house, it reminded me of some really serial killer vibes. So who knows what's to come of this character Gene in the way they're presenting him. He actually is stupid enough to drink some whiskey or something, some of the guy's alcohol, and he gets a shock when he looks over the banister and sees that the guy is not there anymore. He's moved. He's done a Michael Myers, and he already puts the glass down, so he's stupid already, but he puts the glass down and it seems like he leaves it there. So there is DNA evidence linking Saul Goodman to being in this house, so the cops will know he's been there. So stupid on his behalf. I'm not sure if this will come into play later in the show. Just seeing him with the glass and the drink and seeing the shot on the table, it gave me Granite State vibes, which a lot of the Gene stuff has already. So what I mean by that is this was also the penultimate episode of Breaking Bad, was where Walter was in the bar with the whiskey and the cops are on him, and he basically left the drink on the bar and he ran away back to New Mexico. That was the last shot we saw, was of his glass, and we saw a shot of it. It wasn't the final shot of the episode, but we saw the glass. So I'm wondering if that's something to do with the things to come, on how he may be apprehended, or at least people know that he is in the area. Which then takes us to the scene where he tries to leave the house and he sees the guy who's sat on the stairs, the guy with cancer, who is basically in a sleep coma after all the drugs he's been pumped in, and he's on the stairway, and Saul is about to crack him over the head with a urn or a jar. I think it's from his dead cat. And once again, I'm reminded of how the things that Saul is desperate enough to do, and would he have done it? I'm not too sure, because we see that the guy kind of falls asleep on the stairs and Saul is able to escape, but it just puts the thought in your head that it looks like he would have done that. He would have maybe even knocked him out, but he could have possibly just killed that guy just to escape scot-free. And it's those things that remind you that Jimmy is not entirely a good person, and he's capable of doing bad things. And that is what, I mean, that's the one thing about humanity. If you're backed into a corner and you only have certain options, some people will take horrible options to just to get themselves out, self-preservation. And Jimmy has always been quite a selfish person, honestly. So now we're back at the divorce scene, the Saul Goodman timeline, and we see that Jimmy is preparing for Kim to enter. And at this point, when Kim enters, she doesn't actually look too much different than she did in the last time we saw her in the normal Jimmy timeline. So it's been about 6 years, I think he says, they've not seen each other. And this whole scene is just one big facade, and it honestly shows you that throughout Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, that this character isn't gone. Jimmy isn't gone. He's there, and he's behind these walls inside himself, trying to keep this facade up, this personality of Saul as his way to fame, his way to riches, and all of these things that he does. But down deep inside, he is still Jimmy, and he still has these feelings about these things that have gone on in his life, these traumatic events, and you feel really bad watching it, because you just know that there's so much to be said in this scene where they're both kind of just sat there across the room, not really talking to each other. Saul's playing on his phone, he's like laughing at things on his phone, and Kim is sat there signing the paper, and you can just see that there's so much being unsaid, that you know there's so much that we can sort of think about what they're actually thinking about. Just the way he's acting, he's trying to play it up that he's doing fine with this whole situation, that his life is improved, and it may have in a financial way, but he's not the same person that we knew, and we all loved Jimmy as a character, but Saul he can be quite despicable. So just seeing how bad he wants to be seen by Kim as this guy who is not fazed by her appearance, it's quite sad to see. And you can even see it in her eyes. She knows that he's put on a facade, but she doesn't want to just say anything because she's there to sign his papers and get it over and done with. And you can tell that she wants to say something, but she just kind of holds it all in and just leaves. So this is probably the last scene we see of them together in this timeline. Following this as well, we see the character of Emilio coming back in as a cameo. This is the guy from season 1 of Breaking Bad who was friends with Crazy 8, who was killed in the RV. I think he got like knocked over with all the gas and stuff and died. And this actually plays into a scene from, I think, season 2 of Breaking Bad, where Walter and Jesse are talking about how they should use Saul, if they should use Saul. And Jesse says that this guy actually got my friend Emilio out twice. So this is probably one of the times where Saul actually helped him out and basically gave him the rapport for Jesse and Walter to want to use him in the later dates for the show of Breaking Bad. So just those little tiny things, just a cameo really, but it does kind of sow the seeds for why they trust to use him in Breaking Bad, just because of what they've seen from personal experience. And now we get to see it ourselves hand on, that he's working with someone that Jesse knew. And as Kim is leaving, we get the famous outside of a shop or a building smoking shot. Usually it's between Kim and Jimmy, and we've seen the last of that now, where we saw them last time kind of just getting in their cars and driving away. Kim is having a final sort of Albuquerque drag, it looks like, and we see a silhouetted character in the background. And honestly, I couldn't tell who it was when I first watched this, because I was watching it really late at night on an OLED TV where the blacks were like so dark that I couldn't really tell who it was. But it turned out it was Jesse Pinkman again, so we get to see him again. It didn't really add too much to the show, but it was nice to see two characters you never thought would have appeared together, and them just having a conversation about Saul and her as a lawyer. We had a clever pun on the Better Call Saul world here, where I don't think we've seen too many that haven't been too subtle, but Jesse essentially asks Kim, is this guy any good? And Kim replies saying, he was when I knew him, which is probably something that Jesse had no idea what she was talking about, but at the same time she's going back to her memories with Jimmy, so she's still thinking about the man that he was back then, rather than what she saw in front of her today as Saul Goodman. And then she runs off into the rain with this really dramatic shot. Leading into the climax of the episode, we know we're going to be in for some kind of cliffhanger here, because it's the penultimate episode. We got to be excited for what's to come next. So Jeffy, who essentially I think just drove his car into another car outside of the house of the guy with cancer just to distract the police, and he gets arrested. And Gene kind of lets this happen. I'm not sure if this was Gene's plan all along. I imagine it probably was. So he is in jail and he wants to get out because Jeffy's telling him that these cops think he burgled the house. And we're in two minds about whether Saul here has done this on purpose to get Jeffy incarcerated and take the fall for the robbery, or if he knows that there's no physical evidence and he will get out of this scot-free. So we don't really know. And we know that Saul knew this situation was going to happen because there's a shot of him just sat on the couch waiting for the phone call to happen. So Gene has a plan here to essentially get Marion to bail him out, as saying it's kind of her money from what I remember. So Gene calls up Marion again, and she just knows something is wrong. She's known something is wrong for a couple episodes. She sees Gene hanging out with Jeff and Buddy all the time, but he always seems to be there and then just go and talk to them and leave and go and talk in the garage out at night. So she knows something suspicious is happening. So where you get a scene where Gene goes to the house, and through the windows we see her watching YouTube through the video on the laptop that Jeffy actually bought her with some of his crime money. And you can't really see, but you just see some colourful images, and my only estimation was what actually happened. But here's a shot here from it. We see that when Gene goes in to talk to her about getting Jeffy out, she's actually watching Saul Goodman advertisements on the TV. So the game is up for Gene at this moment. He knows, you can see in his eyes there, he knows he's busted. So what happens next was, there's only a couple of ways out of this situation here, and I was expecting one of them and I wasn't sure it was going to happen or not. So I'm just really going to quickly change over to this picture here. I believe before I move that picture, this is a mirror image of something that happened in the very first episode of Better Call Saul, where Gene is actually watching his old adverts himself. So it's kind of a coming a close circle there. So let me just get this picture up. So Gene discovers that she's watching the video and basically rips the telephone cord out of the wall so she can't phone the police, because he's trying to try and talk some sense into her and stop her from essentially handing him in. And the way this dude wraps this telephone wire around his hands, I was getting instant, you know, Hitman vibes. He's going to strangle her. And I was just thinking at the time, don't do it. You've already done such a bad thing with the guy in the house, and the way they're painting this picture of him, the way he looks in this, I'm just thinking like they're giving this man no redemption. He's going down a worse line than Walter White did. So, I mean, he does not go through with the deed because she has a sort of a hospital monitor on her chest where she can call for help from a nurse. And in the last second she does, she manages to do it and tells the nurse to call the police because she has Saul Goodman in her house. And Saul is on the run. So this is where we are left off with the episode. It is very much like Granite State, where Walter is on the run from the police. The police are on his tail and he is going back to New Mexico. So whether we see Gene go back to New Mexico or whether we see him apprehended straight away, he may end up in court or something. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I can only really assume that the money he's been gathering together is maybe to be used to maybe purchase the vacuum guy again, to go into hiding again and make a new identity. There could be other reasons why he wants the money, but that's the first thought that I can think of. So in that essence, he would want to go back to Albuquerque to wait for the vacuum guy to come and give him an identity. So this could be his downfall, going back into territory where he is known. But at the same time, that's going to give us some really entertaining scenes of him walking through Albuquerque where people might recognize him, and honestly he might even just go all balls out. He might get the suit back on like in that image in the background and just kind of just be himself. And even if it's just for a glimmer of a moment where he's back in style and back as Saul Goodman, it might be worth it to him if he's going to get caught anyway. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Also in the scene with Howard's wife and Kim, she mentions how she's probably going to be going to the police and handing herself in, but there's no real way that she might actually go to jail or do any time for it because there's no physical evidence of Howard or any of the things that happened. It was all just hearsay from her letter, so there's a good chance that Kim could walk from this. So I don't know where the show is going to go in the finale. I just know that it's going to be good, right? It's got to be good. So the only thing I can think of is that Kim is possibly going to be telling the truth, and Saul is trying to escape. Saul might even get caught, and if he does, he might even give some of these characters a little bit of redemption. He might do what Walter White did in Ozymandias, where he basically told Skylar and the police that she wasn't involved at all. So I wonder if he can kind of exonerate Kim and just let her live her life, which would be quite emotional to see how he kind of puts all of the blame on himself just to let her escape the situation. This is all just theorizing right now. I have no idea. I'm excited and I wish I could watch it earlier. I wish I could get the videos up earlier, but I know it's just not going to happen. So at least if I can stay spoiler free, that'd be good. So that's what I've got to say for this episode, for episode 12. I mean, I watched it really late at night and it's been a few days, so it's been really hard for me to try and compile all of this in a quick time and get it out. But I feel like I've said my points. I've said enough things that I was interested in. There's probably lots of stuff that I did miss out this week. I'll try and get as much in for the finale as possible. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thank you for watching this, guys. Yeah, please do support me. If you are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and check out some of my other content. And I will see you again next week, hopefully sooner, with the finale for Better Call Saul. What are we going to do now this universe is closed? Hopefully whatever Vince Gilligan brings next is going to be awesome. So thank you all, and I will see you guys next time.